Joining us now from Heritage Foundation, Norbert Michel. You have to tell me, Norbert, is it Michel or Michael?
It's Michel.
Michel, thanks very much indeed. Now, you got a study which says you repealed Dodd-Frank financial reform and it boosts the economy by $340 billion. Is that over a 10-year period?
That's actually, the 340 is actually a dynamic revenue impact over a 10-year period.
Okay.
So, and then if you look at the GDP effect is more like 1% per year on average over a 10-year period.
Well, you really want the reform of, you want the repeal of Dodd-Frank, don't you? I can tell. So break it down for me. What is the biggest thing that repeal of Dodd-Frank delivers to the economy? Which single item?
Well, I think if you look at the dynamic model that we ran, it says that it's the capital stock, increase in capital stock of about 3 to 4% per year on average. And to be clear, what we've done is we've just used a standard measure of excess borrowing cost. And we estimate that at 22 basis points, and then we remove that from the economy.
Okay, hold on a second. You totally lost us. Can you translate that into everyday English?
Sure.
Because I'm not quite sure I understood exactly what you just said. Give it to me again.
Okay. I'll give it to you again. I'm sorry. So we used the standard approach for measuring what Dodd-Frank has done to borrowing costs, and that looks like it's about 22 basis points.
So Dodd-Frank raises borrowing costs, right?
Correct.
By almost a quarter of a percentage point, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now keep going.
And then when you sort of just plug that in, a standard sort of macroeconomic model to take that out of the economy and to say if you lower borrowing costs again, what do you do to the economy? How do you improve it?
Okay.
And that's what the paper is about.
Now, how do we do this? How do we get rid of that extra borrowing cost, Dodd-Frank? Does it have to be legislated, or can the president do it by executive order in some way?
That's a really interesting question. I think for the most part, though, this has to be done legislatively. In one sense, there's a lot of rulemaking that implemented Dodd-Frank. So some of those agencies could pare back those rules. However, some of those agencies are independent agencies. So it's not as though the president can simply have the agencies do whatever he wants. For the most part, you're going to have to see a legislative solution to this.
Okay, most of the bankers that I've talked to tell me that it is smaller banks, maybe regional banks, community banks. They were worst hit by Dodd-Frank. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate, and it's really strange because if you read the text of Dodd-Frank, a lot of this stuff applies to the largest banks. But what happens is, without any specific legislation at all, those regulations tend to filter down to the community banks. And then on top of that, you have the CFPB, who is supposedly not going to supervise or be incredibly involved with the smaller banks, but the small banks have to apply by their rules as well. And when you throw all those things in with all the regulations that already exist, the overall weight of this is just killing them. And that's what we hear from community bankers all the time.
The good news is that getting rid of Dodd-Frank would boost the economy. The bad news is it's going to take an awful long time to get rid of Dodd-Frank and boost the economy. Norbert Michel, thank you very much for joining us, sir. Great study, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you, sir. Got it.
Thanks for having us.
You want that now, too?